And welcome everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. We're doing redraft steals and busts today. I'm joined with Jeff and Will from Media. How are we doing today, guys?
Doing all right.
Doing all right.
Doing all right. Yeah, we got some steals up first. We kind of talked a little bit beforehand. We talked about how the drafts are falling this year, and all three of us picked a running back as our steal of the year. Wide receivers seem to be getting pushed up the board this season. We've seen some running back injuries in the past, so we've got three running back steals for you, and then we have some busts as well. We're going to get right into it with Kyren Williams, back-to-back years in PPR. He's been the RB7. Where does he find himself in ADP this year as the RB11? So already automatically is a steal. He's only 24 years old at the moment. He's coming off of a 1,300-yard season on the ground and 14 touchdowns. I don't see a reason where his decline is coming. It's not going to be age. I'm not worried with the running backs that they have. They have Corum and they drafted Hunter, but I don't think they're going to eat into Kyren Williams' workload. Sean McVay has kind of shown that he's going to run the one guy and then have the other guys come in and spell him. So I think Kyren Williams right now, people are really just saying maybe Blake Corum's going to get a little bit more work. I'm not 100% sure, but Kyren is going to eat. He's going to be on the field, and he's going to get even more receiving work this year as well. I think with an aging Stafford, he had 34 receptions last year. I wouldn't be surprised if that number is closer to 40. So you're looking at a guy who's done it in the past, is in the same offense with the same head coach who's going to use him. I like Kyren Williams as a value or a steal when he's going behind guys like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, and two guys that we're going to talk about as busts coming up. Do you guys agree Kyren Williams should be higher?
I think so in that Rams offense, man. I'm expecting them to move the ball a whole lot, and Sean McVay never lets anybody down with the running back use. So as long as he stays healthy, I see the sky being the limit for him. I would definitely have him up higher.
Yeah. Little leery of, in some sense, adding Adams in the ball distribution. But also, what a better way to keep your quarterback on the field than to run the ball, especially early in the season when you're like, we can win by running and try to prevent hopefully an injury from happening to Stafford. So yeah, I think he could be a steal in redraft leagues, especially.
Yeah, I agree. So Jeff, we'll move on to your rookie running back, currently being drafted as the RB32. Who do you think is a steal in this year's draft so far?
Kaleb Johnson. I mean, I think people are overthinking that Jaylen Warren is going to be the starter. He is not.
Yeah.
I think Johnson is going to get the lion's share, and I think it even opens up the offense even more now that you have Aaron Rodgers there. I think Aaron Rodgers actually adds a little upside to this offense, and I think Kaleb Johnson's going to benefit. He's a little bit stronger than Najee Harris was, a little bit faster. I think he's going to be a little bit more explosive. So I'm looking at them as far as getting the ball again into the red zone and getting it into his hands, either Rodgers dumping it to him or handing it off. And I think he's going to, being that low, number 32 for a Steelers running back, I'm just like, that's the one thing Arthur Smith is going to do is run the ball. So I'll sit there and wait for him if he's going to fall that low.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if his ADP kind of does rise towards draft season, but I do think he's a steal at this point. You look at an offense that just added Aaron Rodgers. If anything, that adds touchdown upside for a guy like Kaleb Johnson. So I think his touchdown numbers are going to be higher. He's going to get the goal line work. So when they're down there, it's going to go to him. So I do like him as a value here or a steal at 32. I think running back 32, you're getting what should be a starting running back on a team with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback who is going to be in games. So they're going to be scoring touchdowns. So I do like that. Will, you agree as well?
Oh, yeah. And look, going from Fields to Rodgers, you don't even have to worry about the running back getting, losing touchdown runs on goal line situations. Right? I think it's a combination of when he was drafted to a team that likes to run the ball brought in a quarterback that if he's running for a touchdown, maybe the last time he ever runs the ball again. So he should be way further up I think the rookie running backs are being undervalued in some way right now to just the name brand names everybody wants to think is going to do something. And I would be hesitant to pass on rookie running backs in redraft league.
Well, that transitions perfectly into your player, Will. So who is your rookie running back who you think is a value?
Omarion Hampton with the Chargers. Look, they're going to run the ball. They are going to run the ball, and I think he is clear-cut the number one running back. Mm-hmm. And I don't see his carries, his usage being really harmed in this offense. I mean, Harbaugh likes to run the ball. So this is their RB1. No doubt in my mind, he's the RB1. And so if you have a chance to draft him and you see some of the guys going above him, and I think he was going, he's running back 25?
Yeah.
Like running back 25? Really?
I think people are expecting Najee to come in and just kind of be that guy in this offense. I think that Hampton is the more talented running back, so I do like him. I think he's a value at 25. If you look at the guys he's going around, he's definitely better than some of these guys. He's going, right now he's going right behind. Kenneth Walker's ahead of him. Alvin Kamara's ahead of him. So those are guys that I'm kind of not drafting over Hampton, and he's going around guys like James Conner, David Montgomery, RJ Harvey. So it's definitely a place where he should have some value. I am a little bit nervous that, Harris is still going to get his work, so we'll see how it turns out. But I think Hampton definitely has the upside because if he can run away with this job in LA with Jim Harbaugh as the coach, it's going to be crazy for fantasy. The touchdowns will be there, and he should be able to get some receptions out of the backfield. Jeff, do you think Hampton is a good value here as well?
Extremely good value at that because, again, I think that Najee Harris is really brought in to be that third down option. And now with J.K. Dobbins, you're not worried about him coming back. It's a clear two-back system now, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So there's 3 young running backs, 3 guys that we think are values, steals, guys who can help you win. But now we got 3 guys to avoid. I got a young wide receiver, and then we have 2 running back, so definitely going to get all across the board. And my issue with this player is not necessarily where he ranks within his position, but where he's going overall, and that's Brian Thomas Jr., who finished as a wide receiver 4 last year, currently being drafted as a wide receiver 8, which doesn't seem too bad until you look at ADP, and that is a first-round pick. He's going as the 112 right now, and to me, I would not want Brian Thomas Jr. to be my first pick in a draft. They just brought in Travis Hunter, who's been working with the wide receivers. Whether or not he plays 100% of the offensive snaps, it doesn't matter. It definitely takes away from Brian Thomas Jr. They still have Brenton Strange at tight end, who I think takes a step forward. And you're looking at an offense with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. I don't foresee him having those massive touchdown games like he did last year, where he had 10 touchdowns on the season. He had 1,300 yards almost. I think he could possibly be around that 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, but the way he's being drafted as a first-round pick as the first guy on your team, you're expecting him to have, maybe 14 touchdowns, and you're expecting him to get 1,400 yards, and I just don't see that happening in an offense that's going to run the ball. They have Tank Bigsby, they have Travis Etienne, and they just drafted Tootin as well. So this is an offense that's going to try and run the ball to get Trevor Lawrence going, and then it should be good for Brian Thomas Jr., and if he was in the second round and maybe you could pair him with a better running back, or you could have him as your wide receiver 2, I would be extremely happy with that. But to me, to have him in the first round is just a little bit crazy. There's some running backs going after him, wide receivers as well, who are just a little bit more set in stone and guys that are on better offenses than he is right now. So for me, I do like Brian Thomas Jr. as a talent. I'm worried with Travis Hunter coming in. I'm worried what this offense is going to look like this year. I can't. You're betting your entire season on a Jaguars wide receiver. It just doesn't feel like a good move to me. So for now, I'm out on Brian Thomas Jr. unless he falls later into the mid to late second round. Jeff, would you be betting your season on Brian Thomas Jr.?
I would never bet my season on a Jaguars player. Ever. Unless maybe Jim Brown was reincarnated and placed on the Jaguars. That is about it. And I don't think that's going to happen. So, no, I absolutely would not.
Yeah. Will, you on the same page here where it's just a little bit too high?
Was there not a report today he got hurt in minicamp? Now, they said he's fine.
Yeah.
But he came down on his shoulder and had to be carted off. So, it's just something about the Jaguars just aren't right. Can't quite get my thumb on it. Makes me nervous. I'd be happier taking him. Like if I had the first or second, or if I was like in a 10-team redraft and I was like at 7, and I could get somebody else and then get him in the second round on the snake, I would do that. But I'm not sure I'm taking him at the top 10 right now.
Yeah, if you look down the stretch where he really had a good 6 games to end the season, there were games that they weren't necessarily in. They were trailing. Hopefully they should be a little bit better of a team this year, so they won't be throwing as much and they'll be able to run the ball. But his targets, 10, 12, 14, 13, 10, 11. So those targets are going to have to be there for him to return on this value, and I'm not necessarily thinking that those are going to be as consistent as they were down that stretch, because they should theoretically, new head coach, they should be a little bit better. They should be able to run the ball and kind of close out the games that way, as opposed to just, okay, we're down, Trevor Lawrence is hurt, whatever. We're just throwing the ball as far as we want, as many times as we want. So hopefully we'll see, but I'm out on Brian Thomas Jr. Jeff, you have a guy here that Will and I have talked about on a previous show, dynasty-wise, but who is your bust for redraft this year?
My guy is just kind of high. Looking at the ADP for running backs, they have Bucky Irving as number 8. It's just a little high for my blood. Being a rookie, he kind of came on the scene. A lot of people got him actually off of the waiver wires last year. And there's just too many things going on with Tampa Bay. You still have Rachaad White there. Sean Tucker makes an appearance here and there. They just drafted Emeka Ugba for the slot, so I'm worried about him getting dump offs. They got a new OC, so, Cohen is gone as the head coach now. So there's just so many things, and there's always that sophomore slump that can come in. So there's just too many variables there for me to look at him as such a high pick as far as the RB running back is concerned. There's some other things like we were just talking about, Omarion Hampton and Kaleb Johnson, who, we're kind of looking at those guys as offenses where we know they're going to get the ball. So that's my whole thing. I don't know what Baker might show up either. A Baker that wants to just throw the ball around the yard or what. So just a little bit.
He said today he wanted to go deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see. You running backs going behind Bucky Irving are Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, James Cook. I'm taking all of those guys.
Yeah, all of them.
All of them over him. You're looking at a player who did really well in his rookie year. He finished as the PPR running back 13. He had 1,100 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns, and 47 receptions. I don't really see how many of those numbers go up. I think Sean Tucker will be involved in this offense. We already mentioned Rachaad White. It's going to be 3 guys out of the backfield. They brought in another wide receiver, as you mentioned, with Igbuka. They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. There's just not enough to go around in this offense that should be, middle of the pack. They're not going to be an elite offense scoring, 30 points a game. That's not who the Bucs are going to be. He'll have games for sure, but I don't think as your RB1, being the RB8, I don't think that's definitely where you want to have Bucky Irving for sure. He doesn't profile to be an every down back either with his size. So yeah, I think I'm out. Will, we've talked about it. You are also not in.
No.
And not to mention they brought in Tez Johnson as well if he makes the team. But if they do, he's that type of gadget type guy that I can see them using.
So yeah, it's definitely, we're out on Bucky Irving. Everyone seems to be in. The fantasy community loves him because of, you said, he was a off the waivers guy last year. Everyone was in on him. They love that. So they're bringing that into this year, and I agree. We've hyped him up too much. We can bring that down a little bit, then maybe, but he's got ways to fall before I would be looking at targeting Bucky Irving. Will, I didn't mention one name being taken just before Bucky Irving, but who is your bust of the season so far.
And I hate saying it's a bust because I respect him. And I think for fantasy owners, there's always he's going to put it together. But it is Christian McCaffrey. You know, and if you look at his history, right? So first 3 years of his career, 16 games, all three. And that 2019 season, 287 carries, 84 or 50. What was the receptions?
116.
Okay. Right. So now you go and you look at his last two before 24. Mm-hmm. And then after that season in Carolina, right? Following your 3 games, following your 7 games, following your 6 games. Then goes to San Francisco, finishes out 11. So he played 17, right? In the season. 2022, he played 17, 244 carries, and it was 85 receptions. Then you get to 2023, 16 games played, 272 carries, and 67 receptions. He is 30 years old, or he'll be 30 years old. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of tread off those tires. And as much as he's probably, if there's a fantasy football Hall of Fame, he is probably a first ballot fantasy football Hall of Fame inductee. For him to be drafted where he's being drafted right now is absurd in redraft. Just is. I think he's a top 4 rounds. He's a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think it's people are drafting on what they remember him being, and the history shows you it's probably, I mean, I think he'll have a decent year, but I think the 49ers know they can't use him as much. There's no way he's getting 272 carries and 80 receptions this year. And even with Debo gone, right, there's a reason why they drafted the kid from Oregon in this draft. And I think if you were paying attention to the draft, that kind of shocked people. They traded away, what's the name to the Vikings?
Jordan Mason.
And then Mason, right? And then they drafted, is it Jones? Jordan James?
Jordan James.
Jordan James, right? Jordan James reminds me a little bit of McCaffrey, right? So maybe not the body strength overall and size, but, you know, I just think when you see, there's always that, like, the most important thing as a fantasy owner, do you know when to get rid of a player in Dynasty? Mm-hmm. And do you know when not to draft and redraft? Like, are you smart enough to see the cliff coming? And McCaffrey has all the characteristics of a guy who's going over the cliff.
Yeah, I think McCaffrey will either finish as probably top 6 running back, or he'll finish outside the top 30. I think that I don't really see him fitting in like a late RB1. Like, he's either going to, in my opinion, if he plays a full season, I think his receptions will be up because you look at who they have in the wide receiver core this year. Again, they got rid of Debo. You're looking at Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, DeMarcus Robinson's dealing with the suspension. So I think that he can get those reception numbers back up to maybe around 80 if he plays a full season. But that's hard to predict him playing a full season. As you said, they're going to have to be smart with him. I think he'll have the touchdowns. What we saw in his RB1 season in 2023, 14 touchdowns on the ground and another 7 through the air. I just don't think they're as good of a team as they were then. So those touchdown numbers might not be there because they're not going to have as many opportunities.
He's RB6 and 18 overall. He should probably be like RB12 and in the late 20s to 30s to early 40s in a redraft. Like you said,
if you take McCaffrey, you're betting on him being healthy, and that's not necessarily the bet you want to take. Jeff, are you on the same page here where it's just health?
I am. Health and decline, you know.
Yeah.
I think he is. And then, just like last year, once he does start to get nicked up, Shanahan's going to start rolling through that other bevy of running backs that they have. Yep. So then it's going to be a full-blown running back by committee. He'll have some good games, and then he's going to have games where, you know, 3 running backs kind of split everything up. It's just going to be a very pedestrian performance. So, for a high pick like that, I couldn't see myself putting all of that in on McCaffrey.
Yeah, I agree. So we've got 3 guys there to avoid in your drafts. We already talked about 3 guys. You should be targeting some guys who can add value to your team at their spots. I want to thank Jeff and Will for joining me tonight. Make sure you guys go check out Media. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.